Hi there, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today I've got a couple of cards to share with you showcasing the July 2016 Simon Says Stamp card kit. I also incorporated the new hydrangea die from the latest Among the Stars release from Simon Says Stamp, and I've used all pattern paper and cardstock and stamps and inks from the kit to create both of these cards today. I'm going to start by die cutting a bunch of these hydrangea florals from some of the cardstock in the kit. I am die cutting everything from this white cardstock, and I'm going to die cut these florals several times. I need a whole bunch of them. I'm going to be layering them together to create some dimensional flowers. Once I have all of these die cut, I'm going to be applying color using the great little ink cubes included in the July kit. Now, because these are dye ink, they are a little bit different than maybe other kinds of ink that you're used to using. What I like to do when I apply ink directly to paper is I like to use these great little sponge daubers. And that gives more control on how I'm getting the ink on the cardstock. So I am using both the steel blue and thistle inks from the kit. One thing about dye inks is that they're going to absorb into the paper. So where maybe the ink looks a little blotchy in places, once that ink kind of absorbs and dries, it smooths out, leaving you with these really great soft florals. So any of that blotchiness kind of fades away. You also want to keep in mind that because these are dye inks, the color that you originally or initially apply is going to be much darker, or a little bit darker, I guess I want to say, than what you end up with. So after I tried that out with a few, I'm going to take all of my florals and apply the color. This is super quick and easy. You just grab that little dauber, ink it up, and then apply the ink on the florals. I was not super particular with, how I applied the ink. I just kind of kept the steel blue to the middle of the florals, and the thistle is going to be on the outside edges and kind of blend those colors together. So I'll switch now to the thistle, going around those outside edges of all of the flowers. I think these colors blended together really beautifully. And you can always go back with the steel blue if you need to, maybe on a couple of the flower petals. The thistle was a little darker than maybe I wanted it, or a little more prominent, so I did go back in with a little steel blue if needed. Using one of these stitched rectangle dies, pardon me, not the stitched rectangles. These are one of the basic rectangles dies, also from the Among the Stars release. I'm die cutting some of the pattern paper from the July kit. I'm also going to take two of these basic rectangle dies, layer them together, and from some of that cardstock also included in the kit, I'm going to create a frame. I'm going to use a little post-it tape to hold my frame in place while I run it through my die cutting machine. I'll run it back and forth just a couple times to make sure I get a really nice, crisp, clean cut. I'll pop that out, and I'm being kind of careful to pop it out. I'm keeping those post-it tape pieces in place in case I need to die cut another frame, or I want to build up my frame. That way it's going to be exactly the same size. So I kind of kept my frames together with the post-it tape while I work on the rest of the project. So there is my frame, my inside piece. This pattern paper inspired the entire card. I love the watercolor droplet type look of this paper, and I made sure when I die cut my rectangle, I did it on one side of that 6x6 sheet of cardstock. That way I could use the leftover strip for my next card. From some of that same cardstock that I just cut the frame, I'm going to use one of the basic banner dies, also from the Among the Stars release, and die cut my banner. this is where I'm going to apply my greeting. I'm going to use one of the greetings from the stamp set included in the card kit. And I'm just simply laying everything out here to make sure I like how it looks. Using some of the slate ink also included in the card kit, I'm going to ink up my greeting really well. I stamped it off a couple times on my grid paper background just to make sure I'm going to get a really good impression before I take it to my banner. And then I'll stamp my greeting right there on the banner. It's going to read, "Sending Comforting Hugs." Here's where I decided to cut another one of those frames. That way I can build up my frame and have one right on top of the other, give it a little bit of dimension. And because I kept that Post-it tape on the frames, it's going to die cut exactly the same size. So I just carefully kind of peeled that out there. I'll move my flowers back in place, trying to figure out where I had them. My Big Shot kind of dislodged everything, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and take my tape runner now and attach that watercolor die cut rectangle background to the center of a top fold card base. I'm going to trim down my banner just a little bit and attach that right to my card. Then I'm drawing a little line of adhesive all the way around that middle rectangle, attaching the first frame, adding another layer of adhesive, and attaching the second frame. Now I'm simply going to take some glue dots, layer my flowers. Some of the flowers are going to have 3 layers, some will have 2, it just depends. And then I've got some older Doodlebug mini pearls. These are the blue jean color, and they perfectly match the colors I use to color in these florals. And I'm going to put those right in the middle. If you do not have the exact color pearl center that you need, you could always take white pearls and color them in with Copic markers. And that's going to give you a perfectly matched pearl for your florals. I'll attach the last 2 flowers really quick here, add the flower centers, and my first card is going to be completely done. But I die cut all of those flowers and already added all of the color and ink to them. So I'm going to go ahead and create a second card. So from that leftover pattern paper strip, I'm going to take one of those basic banner dies, and it's almost exactly the same width as the die. So I'm just going to kind of use a little Post-it tape to hold it in place just so I get that nice notched edge on one end. So I'm taking it to my cutting pad, taping it in place. Then I can simply flip it over and run it through my die cutting machine. I'll pop that out, and I'll have that nice notched edge along the bottom. You could also use scissors if you wanted to, but I already had that banner collection out since I used it for the greeting on the first card. And then I'm going to take some of my leftover flowers and add them to this card. I've got some of the dark gray cardstock from the card kit. I'm going to create, or trim rather, a little section that I can adhere across my banner. I'm going to take another greeting from the stamp set included in the July kit. I'll ink it up with a little bit of the Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder to emboss that. I love the look of white embossing on dark cardstock. And the new Simon Says Stamp embossing ink works great. And this is the Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White Embossing Powder. Go ahead and heat that up. Heating up my heat tool so it's good and hot before I take it to my paper. And I'm just going to move it back and forth until my greeting is, that embossing powder is completely melted. And then I will attach this to the banner on my card. I made a little mess with the embossing powder, so I'm going to clean that up real quick. Now, I kind of forgot about my greeting, so I went ahead and put the adhesive on my banner, and I realized I needed to attach the greeting first. So I really quick picked that up and attached my greeting so that I could trim off the 2 long ends. Just center that right there on the strip. I want to make sure that I don't trim off any of the actual greeting. I'm going to snip off both of those ends, and then I can attach that banner. And I'm attaching it right to the center of a top fold card base. You could also do one side or the other if you prefer that look more. I'm going to trim off the excess along the top, and then again I'm going to take my florals and use some glue dots to attach them one on top of another, layering them together in either groups of 3 or 2, just depending. And then I'm going to situate them kind of along the edge here. I want to tuck some of the petals underneath. So I have 2 groups of flowers rather above my greeting strip and 1 below. And again, I'm using those Doodlebug Blue Jean pearls in the centers. I've had those forever, so it's a great way to use up something that I've had in my stash. I'll attach that last flower to the card, and then I'm going to take a 1/2 inch corner rounder and round all 4 corners on my card. And that's just going to soften the edges a little bit. This is a really simple card design, and that dresses up the corners and gives it a nice finished look. So this is a great way to get 2 cards out of 1 sheet of 6x6 paper and a few flowers. Thanks for watching this video showcasing the Simon Says Stamp July 2016 card kit. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video here on the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.